Hi, everybody. I hope you're doing marvellously well. I'm very happy to be sitting here with Mr. Ruben Tilgner. How the devil are you?
Hi, thanks for coming.
Well, of course, you design, own, and run Elysia.
Yeah.
We've had a blast here. We've been here for 3 days. Hopefully, everybody's already watched the factory tour, so they'll have a little bit more prior knowledge. Well, your design philosophy runs right from the designing of the products right through it getting sent out the door. Everything is so well maintained, so well thought out, so well researched. I mean, just the way that you keep all of your parts organized so that you can build these beautiful units really effectively. That must have started at an early age. You must have had a fascination for detail and creativity.
It's a little different because one part is more the construction of all the gear and designing. The other part, the organization, is a little more what came up when your business is growing, and then you saw problems. The company wasn't look like what you saw now. So before, it was more chaotic and not so super organized, but it became, and also I get the right people here in my team that do the job. I mean, I'm also focused on that it looks great and good, but my team was able and is able to do it in this way.
I have not seen as well a run organization in my life. And I've been to some pretty organized companies, but this is very well run. And the other thing that, we've loved, my wife and I, is just how much of a family this feels with your employees, but also the fact that your family are very, very involved. Your mother came down and cooked, as did your wife and your son. And it was just a really wonderful experience. Well, but take it right back. When did you first start messing around with electronics? How old were you?
11, 12, something like this. Yeah. But I was always investigation how things work. So there was always a story that my parents told me and other people. When I got something at Christmas, let's say a car making noise, this fire car, police car making noise. And a week later, when the next year came up, it was broken because I opened it up and want to know where come this noise from and all the movements. And so from when I was a child, something in me that was some kind of interest how things work and what's inside.
So it's great.
Yeah.
What was the first thing you soldered and put together yourself?
There was a company in Germany, it's Conrad Electronic, and they offered kits where all the parts were in, a PCB board, and you put them in, then you solder all the stuff. And that's where you learned all this. Another way was, there was another kit from, I think, Philips it was, and where you have some springs, and in between the springs, you can do the connections and the resistors, and there are a manual what you can do. And this was also pretty nice. And the first thing I think what I really made myself was for the disco lightning, for audio to lightning. I don't know what the name is in English.
Right.
Yeah. So I designed this. So I make the PCB panel myself and do the etching of the panel. Do some drills in there, put the parts in there. I mean, there was some serious thing because there were also high power voltage in there. So
voltage.
Yeah. So and then we put some music into, and then there was some flashing things. So interesting. I was more involved in lighting when I was young rather than music or sound. So I wanted to create a disco in my little room at home. So I built totally crazy stuff. So one thing was I have a vinyl record, and then I put on a lamp from a bicycle, and then create some contact that it can move, and the lightning was brightening up.
How old were you when you built that first kind of disco lighting rig?
I think 13, 14, like this. Yeah.
Obviously, we've been working on a song here at the studio, and we've been using your mic pre's and compressors, and the Alpha, of course, the compressor, the character for the X filter, all these.
Envelope also.
In the envelope, been featuring very heavily. Yeah. A product that everybody must own, by the way. You're clearly a fan of dance music. You're saying like a disco setup, 13, 14, that would have been like early 80s.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up with this. I mean, I was born in 73, so I was 10 years old when the music changed heavily in the 80s. So from more 70s sounds, and then when it 84, 85, all this disco-like sounds came up. And I know when we have this in our town, what's the name? I don't know. When you go to entertain you in your town, and there's these self-driving cars with this electricity coming from the top.
Bumper cars.
Yeah, bumper cars.
Yeah.
And they have huge sound systems in there.
Sure.
So this was my first experience in terms of disco, and then you hear the sound moving, and heavy bass, and this was influencing me. And so when I was 9, I got my first hi-fi system. And then I built some speakers, well, Dad together. He make all the furniture, the enclosure and everything. So, and then you have this stereo sound on your headphones. I think I was heavily influenced by this time.
We're in an area called Nettetal.
Yeah.
Yes. You were born here, you grew up here, you're still here, you have your factory here, which is great. Where did you end up going to school, I suppose? Where did you go to university or college?
I mean,
and did you go to study electronics?
Yeah, I mean, the way it was, I have here, it's a middle school, it's Realschule in German. And so I did this, and then I found out I have an interest in electronics. So then what should I do? And then I start education or this practical education in Germany, where you do it 3 years in a company, and then a little bit school of this for the theoretical stuff. And I learned to repair TV sets and radios and a hi-fi system. So that's what I learned.
So it's like an apprenticeship. So you're going to school, but you're while in a company.
Yeah, you're more in a company, and then you have a little bit of training. But unfortunately, I haven't learned that much in that company, because in that time, in the beginning of the 90s, there was I think 91, a big storm. So, and all the antennas on the roofs are, like this. And so I was always on the roof and bring up the antennas so that the people can watch TV again. And 3 years later, I was making cable TV everywhere. So unfortunately, I haven't learned that much in, let's say, TV sets, videotapes, and CD player, all the interesting stuff. And after this time, after the 3.5 years, I found out it's not interesting for me only to repair stuff, because this is some kind where you have some experience. So the experienced guys know, this TV set from, I don't know, Philips has this problem, so please change this. And so, I mean, I was young, and so I found out it's more interesting for me to create stuff and to build something on my own.
So did you move from there to SPL, or was there something in between?
Yeah, it was something in between. So after this, there was a year where you can decide to go to the army or do something different, so some kind of a social thing. And that's what I did. And after this, because with my education, I could not go to university. So because I have my practical education, but then I need to have some kind of an upgrade to go to the university. So this was 1 year. And in that year, there was somebody that knows SPL. And so, hey, come on, we can do a side job there and soldering some stuff. Okay, let's go there. And and I was there. And first job was to assemble stuff, put parts in the PCB and solder it. And then later I checked the gear on the test bench, modified a little bit. And the SPL guys say, this guy is really smart. And after I was finished with the school and want to make my decision, they come, hey, do you like to start the company here? So, okay, why not? And this was the beginning. It was a really amazing time. I was pretty young, I have to say. So I was 22, 23, something like this. And all the other members and the CEO, Herman, is 10 years older than me. So he was in his 30s. So we had a crazy time there. And we were freaking out, and a lot of fun stories we made there.
How did you end up designing the transient designer? I mean, how long were you there before that kind of opportunity arose?
Yeah, interesting part is that I haven't told this, but when I have also a little bit of a musician part in me. So when I was 10 years old, I played piano. So I got to a teacher and played the stuff and learned the stuff. And then I did it for 4 years. And then you're a teenager, 14. Okay, you don't like classical music anymore. And then my dad brings me a bass guitar from the school. So he's a teacher. So, and they bring me a bass guitar. And then, I had no education for this. And there was a famous German band, Die Ärzte. I got a tape from them. I listened to them and then play the bass. And from hearing, that was the starting point to go to play in bands. So another friend of mine plays guitar, another drums. So I was 14, and then we started to play in bands. So this is a part of the music stuff that I go in playing in bands. And so when I started with SPL, I was not an engineer, or we have done some demos with a band, but very simple, with 2 mics or 3 mics. Nobody's know what's going on there. Even the compressor, I have no idea what a compressor was. I know with one band, we did a demo, and somebody came up with Boss compressor, half inch, I don't know. Nobody knows how to use it. And the power supply was failed. It was doing hum, so it wasn't usable. So we end up not using a compressor. So at SPL, I get some kind of schematics from another guy and was involved. Okay, it was very interesting how it was working out. And I think it was pretty good in designing envelope followers, because this is the foundation of all the compressors. So that means if you're looking at your waveform at a DAW, you see what, let's say, the movement of your microphone is doing, the AC volume. But for a compressor, you need DC. So you have to rectify the signal, then you have to filter this, and then with the filtering, you have time constants. And I get into this kind of how these envelopes relate what you hear. And this is and the first product that I designed was the Dynamax. So it was a product from SPL, and Herman told me, "Hey, can you do something which is very simple to use for a compressor?" I said, "Okay." And it's basically one knob. It's the threshold, basically, with a fixed ratio, softney, and we put out the makeup gain and some other small buttons. But it was really often used in live environment. So the live engineers love this thing because, oh, you need compression, boom, it's there. And the dynamics was some kind of not automatic, but also with some kind of lock release times, a little bit of auto fast, so that it will work on many different signals. And so I was into all this envelope following stuff. So this was the foundation for the transit designer, so to have the knowledge from this.
So you made that first, and was a transit designer the next thing that you designed?
I mean, I've done other stuff for SPL, also mic preamp, the gold mic, and lots of other stuff. But the transit designer was, I was 25, I think, when I did this. And it came up. I have my little home studio and with some synthesizers. And then there came up an album for Michael Jackson. I don't know the name, but the sound was so punchy, really so slamming. The drums was pushing like heavy, and it was done with compressors. I mean, I have done a compressor, but I didn't know that people misuse the compressors to shape the transient like him. So, okay, let's create a device that do it. And I don't know where I got this from, this differential thing, let's say, name it like this. But then I got, I don't know, a crazy moment, because I have a breadboard. So it's where you put your pods in, and they have little cables to make the connections, and you can do everything in a few hours. And I know there was a time where Herman was, I don't know, for a few days off in the office, because I've shared the office with him. And then, okay, let's do some crazy stuff. And so doing the breadboard, and it was 2 days that I created the basic circuitry for the transient designer. So we have one control for attack and one for release. So, and then he came back, "Hey, you have done something. Wow, this is crazy. Let's do a product from this." But it took another 3 months that this is working properly on different signal types and different input levels and everything. So yeah, that was at the beginning of the transit designer.
And you've taken it way further, obviously. Now with the envelope, you can not only adjust the attack and the sustain, but you can be selective of what frequencies you want to use for the attack and for the sustain. Absolutely superb. Again, I'll push that. We've been working the last few days and messing around, and the envelope really is a flagship product.
Yeah, I think the envelope is something that was also with the mixing session here. When people think in drums processing, there's compressor first and maybe gate. But I think the possibility of the envelopes is way better and easier and faster. And if the people know the potential from this, they have way more easier time to make the drum sound.
Absolutely. And then if you've already got a pre-existing mix set up and you've got your hybrid system or whatever it is, just pop that in the end in the same way you would use the transient designer, but you can do so much more with it.
And funny that the envelope was also the idea that you can process more complex signals. The original transit designer was not, it was focused on single sources, on percussive stuff, and the people also wanted you on buses, maybe on complete mixes. So that was a challenge to tune the envelope in a way from the sound quality and also with how the envelopes react to make it more usable for master bus. And then the mastering engineers ask us, "Hey, can you do a modified version of this with a reduced gain range?" Okay, we can do this, and it's now out since last year, since 2023, and they're using it on their master bus to do slight adjustments.
It makes sense, everybody's competing to have the loudest possible mix. And what comes with that is completely destroyed transients. So,
Yeah.
which is, a lot of the time we're getting fishtailing and you're trying to, maybe using a soft clipper on the alpha to tame those transients. But I think these days, mastering engineers, again, send things that are just blobs. And they're trying to dig out some kind of energy.
Yeah.
Where is that transient on the kick and snare? It's gone. But that you can get frequency conscious and just exaggerate those moments. Yeah, a wonderful product. SPL, you design a transient designer. What year was that?
Okay, let's think about this. It was, Dynamax, then the transient designer, the Gold mic, then the channel strip channel 1, then later on the summing devices mix stream, the smaller version of this, and then Gold mic 2, and later on the gain station, also another preamp, and I think that's. I mean, I forget some stuff, but I think it was pretty much.
When did you decide to go on your own and start your own company?
Yeah, I mean, that was the Dominic Klaassen is the one that was also a former guy, which we created the company. I know him from music. So we were playing a band, and then we were in a pub and talking about all this stuff, and then he wants to give him money to build him a preamplifier for his bass. It was a special fee. I say, no, I don't want to have money for this. And then we came up with the idea of creating a company. And the first idea was more to do some MIDI tools or other stuff to get no problems with SPL. And then I started to design some circuitries that I thought, okay, this amplifier sounds so amazing. It's for a higher purpose. And so first we had some kind of idea. We name it Class A for the public, and which is obviously this stuff here. But then we saw, okay, when we start a company, it must be huge. So I got the ideas for the amplifiers, but not the final product. And then in 2005, I was at Music Messe, and I was I was there for SPL and showing the stuff, but in my mind I was doing other stuff. And at one night I got an idea for the alpha compressor, and I'm make a hand note, and then I came back and Dominic, hey, there's the alpha compressor. And that is basically it. With all the features, the functions, what's in there, we hadn't changed this, so it was the idea. And I'm not a mastering guy, so it's not that I have tons of experience. It's more my vision. Okay, what can I do to make this kind of product? And in that time, 2005, the mastering guys are really doing hard clipping on their AD converters. And I said, okay, this sounds horrible. There must be better tools to have a better sound. And then I thought, okay, if I combine different things with MS, with parallel, with sidechain filter, soft clipper, then I got a toolbox. For me, the alpha is more a toolbox rather than only a linked stereo compressor. And this can really make your job really easy. And then with all the components and the circuitry, because you add more and more stages in the signal path, and when the signal path is not clean and good, you maybe, you have a change in the sound maybe, or it's less or worse. So that was a challenge for the alpha to have it as good as possible.
Well, it's certainly wonderful. We had a lot of fun playing around with it here today. I mean, it's very invisible what it's doing. It's doing what it's supposed to do. You're getting level, you are compressing it, the MS works really well. I'm usually afraid of MS, to be honest, because it always messes with the faves for me, but it didn't. It's very mono-compatible, which is remarkable. And the soft clipper, once again, really did work wonders, taking some of those transits down from the kick and snare without really, destroying them in a way that makes it almost useless. A lot of the time, when I've used soft clippers for that purpose, it's to the detriment of the mix, and I just go back and remix the song differently.
Wow.
So that was really wonderful. So there you are. It's 2005. You launched the company in 2006?
Yeah, so we begin the working on the alpha in 2005, and in 2006 we came up on Music Messe with the first alpha and do the showcasing. I mean, when you see the story, how we created in our factory to see what amount of effort we put into how to build this, and a lot of parts were built in the garage of Frank and the team member here, and it was a crazy time because it was such a special device and mechanical wise and also audio. So that was crazy time to build this, and and then we came out in 2006 at Music Messe and presented it to the public.
That was your first product. What was your second product after the alpha?
The second was the Empressor. Because we went to some studios with the alpha, and then the engineers tried to crank up the alpha like hell. I said, no, it's not made for this. And I know it was in a studio tour in the United States. We went from San Francisco to Los Angeles to New York, and then I came up in a hotel room. Hey, let's do another device, making more crazy stuff. And that was the invention of the M-Presser. And there I've embedded some special features like negative ratios, then the gain reduction limiter. And
explain negative ratios before we move on.
And normally when you see the curve of a compressor, it's like, okay, it's, let's say, rising, and then you have like a soft thing, and then, okay, it's not doing more. Or maybe it's a flat curve, it's a limiting curve, but it can go down. So that means if you have a drum mix and the loudest part is pushing very low, so then you end up having only the higher only, because the higher tone, the loudest notes are pushing really hard, and this is negative ratios. And then it's too extreme. So then I embedded the gain reduction limiter, which is basically limiting the control voltage. And then you can say, okay, do only, let's say, 8 dB of compression, independent what you're doing with ratio and threshold.
That is a really nice feature.
That's also embedded here in the Espresso and as well in the Impressor 5400. The Alpha is not this feature because I think with a few dB of compression, you don't need this function. But especially on many other signals, it's a super cool thing.
Yeah, no, I love that idea where you just lock how much compression it's going to do at any one time. It is fixed there. So it's a very smart idea. When did you buy this building? When did you move in here?
And when we started the company, and I got a huge support from my parents. So
that's wonderful.
Yeah, because I mean, I had a fixed job, I was paid, and then like I wanted to do my own thing, and it's a big risk. And that time, my parents said, okay, he will support you.
Amazing.
Yeah, and then we started the company in the basement of my parents' house.
Wow.
Yeah, and this was also very good.
That explains the involvement of your parents. Your father's been here, your mother's been cooking for us.
Yeah, so I mean, if
your baby is, you're their baby, and you have a baby. So this is like their grandchild.
Yeah, in certain ways, absolutely. And I'm super happy that I got this support, because when the parents are too skeptical, maybe, this is too risky, maybe you don't do it. And now they're super proud of what it came up here.
Well, from what I can tell from what you've said and from interacting with them, they knew your whole life you'd been that guy. You'd been the tinkerer. You'd always been incredibly inventive, like you said, taking apart your Christmas presents, to find out how they worked. And I'm a parent. My wife and I have 2 kids, and you can already see their loves and their passions.
Nice.
But not every parent is supportive in that way. So that is amazing that they did that for you.
And also, my dad was a teacher, and he educated also some kind of electronics in the school. And so that was my the nice thing. And also in this basement is full of stuff, wood stuff, metal stuff, everything, workbench. And so it was tons of stuff to play around. And even with my brother, he's 1 year younger than me. I don't know, we have played on bicycle, modified them. So we always do something. And then I got a very little room that we built some tables in there. And then was my first room for my electronic stuff. And there's two soldering and everything. Yeah, this was really supportive. Yeah.
I was to think as a teacher, he probably had a lot of objectivity where he could see, having taught so many kids, when somebody really believes in something and is really driven, you can.
There was one fun story. They did a course where you built a little electronic toy with it in the school, or a little let's say game. And there's a little PCB, and the students have to do it their own. And I think there were 14 or 15 in the school, but I was, let's say, 11. So he bring me in the school class, and then I would do some kind of observation and looking if they're doing this proper soldering. So, and this other, so what's this child doing here? And I was, because I have more experience than them, so it was a funny situation. That he brings me into school. Yeah.
I love that. So here it is. It's really a family business in all ways, shapes, or form. Your employees feel like family here as well. That's true, yeah? Looking around. They're all smiling and not under duress. They're actually genuinely smiling. Let's sort of move to the present day. You have some exciting products coming out. Are you allowed to talk about any of them? Yeah, you did show the Channix at
yeah.
NAT,
I think
so
that
let's
is
talk a little bit about Channix, because that's going to be huge.
Yeah, absolutely. But I like to a little step further because
Please.
the company in the last 4 years really transformed a lot because we have new employees here, and with each guy you get in the company, you're getting better if you have the right guys. And I have to say, especially with Stefan and also Frank, they did an amazing job. So when 4 years ago, the company will look different, and even the level of what we produce here ourselves wasn't that huge. So it is really depending on my team, and I'm so happy and proud to have these people here, thinking in philosophy and this cleanness and that looking everything cool and the quality. And with this way, how we manufacture, this was a foundation for the upcoming products. So in the factory tour, you see what we can do. And the Channix is the next, it's like the alpha compressor. The housing, the electronics is very special. And only with the tool set, with the people here, we are able to create this kind of device. And so I'm super happy to have it in here. I mean, I've invested a lot of money into all the machines to do this. And then we can do the next step in evolution, I would say.
That's absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
So with all of that, tell us about the Channix.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, you see me recording here, people, and with I always had the idea of having some kind of recallable analog gear. So, I mean, everybody wants this, but one thing is you make the audio proper, and the one other thing is how the user interface. So this, I think, for me, two important things that must be done really good, that the experience for the end user is really good. And the first part, the audio, is, I think, the most difficult, because when you have an analog circuitry, and let's say an old compressor or so, there are potentiometers and there are switches. The switches are not, it's easy to replace them by a relay, but if there is a certain potentiometer in the circuitry, there's not another electronic or controllable potentiometer that you can replace easily. Right. And so you have to do the complete schematic from scratch new. So this is where you really go into development, and we have to do something completely new.
I mean, I'm massively intrigued how you've done it. We were talking about it the other day. Some companies use servos, and they're controlling massive potentiometers, and that all makes sense. But the pots, the potentiometers in the Channix, do multiple things.
Yeah, I mean, what we use as to change level frequencies is VCA. So I think I'm very good in designing VCAs. So everybody who builds compressors or gates, automation systems, they use VCA, so voltage controlled amplifiers. So, but there are not many parts in the market that you can buy. And when I start to build my compressors, and at a certain point, it was when I do Elysia, I found out, the VCAs are not in that quality that I want to have in a big compressor. So I start my own VCAs. In the alpha, there's more some kind of a sub-version of this is passive, so it can only attenuate. But then with the Expressor, I came up with another VCA, and it sounds really superb. And then I developed more and more different versions of the VCAs. And I think I really mastered this. And even in here now in the Expector, the volume is done with the VCA. It's so precise. The stereo tracking is perfect, and you can do several function with this. And so this is the foundation of a controllable element in a recallable device. So this was one important part to have the next step. And that is, I think, why not so many companies came up and built recallable equipment.
I'm so glad you're doing it. And I'm also glad that you're taking your time doing it.
Yeah, the next part is the user interface, because then you can do totally different things, because you can control the whole thing without any user interface and having a plugin running. So, but my idea was, can we do something that feels as analog as possible? So, and then we found a potentiometer which has no, so it's endless. You can turn it like endless. So, but it's an analog potentiometer, not an encoder with steps involved. So then I created some kind of special algorithm to detect this, and then you have a super fine resolution. It's up to 12 bits. It means more than 4,000 steps. So it with one turn. So it's super fine resolution. And this that's the foundation for this controller, and then we put all the LEDs surrounded by this to indicate this. And then you can think about, okay, we can double use the encode or the potentiometer for another use case. So you create some kind of an interactive front plate.
So wait there. So this potentiometer, it is still passing current. It's not a controller.
It's only creating control voltage. So the flow is the VCA there's a DA converter, and then you have some microcontroller going on, and then there's an AD that tracks the voltage from the potentiometer.
So you can turn it, you can set up output gain or whatever gain, and then when you click it and you change the function, information is obviously stored, and then it serves another purpose. Yeah, the Chanix is going to be absolutely amazing, and I hope it does incredibly well, because I'd love to see you apply all of that technology to your other products.
Yeah, I mean, this is a foundation for our new product line, so that's why it's named Chanix Studio. So Studio is the new line of this lookalike, of this technology, of the user interface, and once it's working, you can imagine to do different things. And this is, I think, what brings Elysia to the next step. That I know that people like to use analog gear, but because of their workflow, you need recallable instantly.
Exactly.
And that's the reason why we came up with the Chanix, to bring recallable in the recording situation, especially when you work with artists do vocal recordings. And I observe several problems. The first is, I'm using analog gear in the processing, but then you have to take a picture and all this. This is one thing that annoys me, but the other thing is the monitor thing. So to provide the artist with a proper monitor, and so that's why we embedded this complete monitor section. First, you have a complete latency-free monitor section, so the signal is direct from the Chanix to the headphone. There are 3 high-end headphone amps embedded, one for the artist, one for the engineer, and third for the speaker or maybe another headphone. And then we embedded a reverb. Even this was, in these days, a little struggling for me to provide some kind of reverb in the recording situation. So, and then when you do the tracking and you focus in as an engineer on, everything's right, and you want to record, and then, can you do my vocal a little bit? Okay, then you complete out, you have to change the screen, the mix and everything. And I love to have, okay, can you make me loud? Okay, boom, like this. No thinking, here's your device. And also, this setup is stored. So whole monitor pass levels, everything is stored, so that you can, when you want to do in the next session, artists come in, and then, okay, in 1 second, we can go.
That's incredible.
And this is, I would say, the workflow that we have established here in the company, to being super efficient, to bring this philosophy to musicianship and producers.
Well, this is super exciting. I love the idea of this being the flagship model, and then you take this technology and apply it to everything else you make. I think really the recallability is huge. And we were talking earlier off camera about the world we lived in, and I was in this world for many, many years, where I had an SSL console and, 40, maybe more. Eric isn't here, Karsh is here, but probably 60 external bits and toys, tons of inserts, loads of stuff. Everything was permanently set up. So it was recallable, but it was recallable because I didn't touch anything. Yeah. I couldn't, if I went in there and tweaked one thing, it could be a nightmare, because you're sitting there thinking, okay, well, I don't have time to completely catalog it and take photos of everything. So I worked out a system where I'd work hybrid, and do tiny moves inside plugins and then leave everything else static.
Yeah, that's also my philosophy. One thing is that the people grow up with DAWs, and they get used to make with one click, you save everything.
Exactly.
So, and then when you start with analog, it's a completely different workflow. Okay, I could not store, and maybe the settings not right. And my vision is that I provide the engineers, the artists, with equipment that the sound is already amazed. So if you in the recording situation, or maybe if you're using a master bus, like, so the combination of X filter and Xpresser on your master bus will really is a lifesaver. Or maybe for the mastering guys, bigger units like Music and Alpha, so that at the front and the end there's something, wow, it's safe. I don't have to care about too lot. The sound is amazing. And then use tool in between, like we did here in this recording session. Someone looked and print it, and then you got your recall. And even if it's wrong, do it another one. But I think the benefit is that you can focus way more on the music, the decisions that are, let's say, more obvious, what kind of instruments are and what they're playing, and that we take more care about the sound, and not that you struggle with the sound and then mess up with using plugins, another plugin made this and this and this, and it can take forever. And my idea is, hey, here's some tools, bring it in, and the sound is really fine.
I agree entirely. I think the thing I was getting at was, number one, exactly what we touched on, the full recall ability. But the reality is I would have all these pieces, and so many of us do, that mix analog, that you never touch, that have one job.
Yeah.
And here you are designing, if we go back to the envelope, for instance, I mean, we used that. Yes, we did use that on the drums all over the place, but it could be on everything. It has a purpose. It has a massive multi-purpose. And we ended up, for those of you that watched the mixing video, printing, and there will be a link to that, of course, printing through all of this on the way in, like the bass. We didn't touch the bass. We recorded the bass the way it was heard. Guitars we didn't touch, recorded the way they were heard. And that idea of being able to commit and then being able to process afterwards, and more importantly, the original point I'm making is the flexibility of this equipment, where I love vintage equipment, I'm sure, as much as the rest of you do, but it tends to be like, well, this is the one thing it's really good for.
Yeah, I mean, that's the philosophy when people start with outboard. Okay, what to buy first? And maybe a compressor and EQ. And that would be good as flexible as possible. And so the X-Filter and Expressor are stereo devices. There are not many stereo EQs out there, and you can use it for anything, for tracking, for end mix, for in between. So and the combination is really getting really strong. So even the easiest way, having a 500 series and put some stuff in. So I think I'm thinking more on the way how people nowadays grew up and then started using, rather than having, the guys having tons of equipment out there and having everything on the same setting. Sure. So I think that is more the modern way of using outboard.
Yeah, absolutely. We're still tactile. We're still human beings. We still pick things up. As much as I do like working with a mouse and being able to edit and all of the great things that we can do, there's nothing better than just reaching over and going, do I want more drive? Do I want less drive? Do I want more attack? A sustain? Whatever it might be, picking up frequencies that I want to have longer sustain on, picking up frequencies I want to add more attack to. Those are huge mixing tools and recording tools. And I just can't help but hear Christian's voice when we did a podcast with myself, and Christian Kohler, myself, and Joe Carroll. We did this podcast. We all sort of asked each other, what was your favorite moments at NAMM, the last NAMM I saw you at? And we all came to the fact that there's two things that we're finding that are going on simultaneously, which we like. And that is, on one side is maybe taking some of the vintage stuff and making it more affordable, getting it away from that. But then we all agreed, that's great. We all love our vintage stuff, but the innovation's really where it's all about. We want things that, like we were saying earlier, probably at lunchtime, plugins have really been good for forcing hardware manufacturers to think outside the box, because you can buy a plugin that does all these different tweaky things. Yeah. Even just the mix control, which was never on a piece of hardware till about 10 or 15 years ago. These are wonderful things, and we should be, getting people excited about making music, giving them new tools to play with and new ways of thinking. And just spending the last few days with you here, I've just been thinking, the problem is for me is like I would probably want like 6 envelopes.
Yeah, that's good. But I also point out that with the beginning of the alpha, what I'm doing is really designing this circuitry from scratch. So this discrete design is taking all the components together and make it technically right, but also a listening test. So that's why we have this studio here, that I can have a circuitry here and make minor changes in listening. It's getting better. And then we think, how can we use the alpha as our main flagship, use the technology and bring them down to be more affordable. And I think what we can offer is really a complete new technology. And you have to compete also against plugins. I mean, that's the challenge for hardware manufacturers.
I like that.
Plugins are
Pushes the boundaries.
Yeah. I mean, hardware softwares are really good. So to be better than software, you must be really good on hardware, and otherwise you have not a big benefit from this. And I think that's what we offer here: really outstanding Class A circuitry design, excellent manufacturing here, but for an affordable price and really reliable. So it's really, you can use it, and we never saw this stuff back again because it's working, and
your QC, by the way, is second to none.
Yeah.
Which quality control. I mean, the amount of steps that you guys and girls do to go through to make sure everything is perfect before it. Just first of all, with the initial components, making sure that before you even put them into anything, that they are matched and perfectly and actually make perfect sense in what you're going to build, which is a huge step, of course, because it's going to save you tons of time on the back end, finding out something failed and you could have figured it out at the beginning.
Yeah.
So I love that. Your attention to detail, and I've said that 100 times since we've been here, is second to none. And you know, it is what we hoped for, and it's been, you know, knowing your equipment, it's what we hoped for, and you've definitely proven it to be so.
Thanks.
Yeah. So I really look forward to your next stage, the Chanex and everything that comes from it. There will be a link to the factory tour. I'm not sure which order all of these videos have come out, but they will eventually all be linked. And of course, there is the mixing session and the tracking session as well. So you get
that was
to see.
super fun.
It was a lot of fun. And we lent on Reuven to do this. He engineered it because, frankly, me in a room I don't know with a bunch of gear going, what does this do? Would probably be pretty boring. So it was nice to have you do it.
Yeah, it was really cool experience also for me, and having you also advise me a little bit and give some ideas, and this was really a very cool experience.
Thank you very much. All right, thanks everybody for watching, and look for all the links down below. And Reuven, once again, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. So long, farewell, auf Wiedersehen, au revoir, adios, ciao.
Tschüss.
Tschüss.